Hey everybody, welcome back to the studio. I am Joe if you haven't seen any of my videos before, and I'm going to be doing what I promised. I am breaking down the DEMA lore, the DEMA canon lore from the music video The Outside, and actually a little bit of shenanigans that took place marketing the video, marketing the music video. So if you're not familiar with some of my other work regarding DEMA 21 Pilots specifically, the story that they have been telling in the background for years now, I have a couple videos and there are tons of conversations and videos that other people have made online. So you can take a look at that, check out some of my other stuff, but we're going to be getting into the DEMA background for The Outside. And let me tell you, there's a lot. There was a lot that happened. Like a couple days before, we saw activity on the DEMA.org website, and that's the secret website, secret at this point, that posts little things that help progress the story. And if we're being honest, we haven't seen a letter from a character, Clancy, in a long, long time. Clancy has not written to us since the Trench era because they've been pushing this narrative that Clancy is dead, which he isn't. He is the character that Tyler Joseph is playing, yet we got 2 letters from him. But before we got that, we actually got something else. We got a map of the continent of Trench. The continent of Trench is there's a little bit of cutoff here, but there's a lot that we can glean from this actual image here, from this map. Now, it was negative, and I reversed it just because it's a little easier to see this way. First thing I want to point out is down at the bottom, the compass. East is pointing up, so east is up. We know that terminology. We have the city of DEMA, that is that circle to the, I guess technically the west side of the island, but if the way we're facing it is south. Over to the south side, or I guess I'm getting all confused. This direction, whatever. There's a little island that you'll see off the coast. It's called Voldsoy. Voldsoy. And I'm going to explain this in a second. I think that's how you pronounce it. And then below DEMA, you have Port Vile. That's referencing Vialism, the religion of the DEMA. This rocky area, you can't tell if that's clouds or if that's distortion from the map. Like stuff got on it, the ink leaked. Or if the circular symbol that we've actually seen in 21 Pilots stuff for a long time is actually trenches, is actually the roadmap, I guess, for the structure of the earth in this world of Trench. And so the cool thing about this symbol is we haven't, like, there's a lot of theories, but I haven't personally seen this symbol used in context yet. It's always been on, like, album covers, and there's a lot of symbols. Like, we didn't get a really hard definition for what the psi symbol represented or the east is up symbol until recently, until this album pretty much. That's just a couple things. I want to point out the fact that in the Saturday music video, they actually left Port Vile. That's where they took off into the ocean where they were doing the performance. And then they had a crash. But before we get too far, I need to explain a little bit more about what happened on the DEMA.org. So if you selected, because it's just a timeline of images that look like this. If you selected this image, and there's going to be a couple more after these I'll explain. If you right-clicked, hit Open Tab in New Window, or Open Picture in New Window, and you look in the URL, there's messages. The first one is the name of the island, Voldsoy with the slash. That's a 21 Pilots symbol that is we know so well. So Voldsoy, I guess. And the cool thing about this is if you type in that specific word with the slash in Google Translate and you use the language Norwegian, it actually tries to find it for you. It translates to English, Island of Violence. Now, this is significant, and I will explain at the end, but for right now, there's messaging here, and there's a reason this island is called Voldsoy. The next thing we saw was a letter. There's 4 items, and I'm going to quickly summarize kind of the context of this letter. It's the internal processing of the Clancy character. The quick hitting points that I noticed that I want to bring to your attention is he starts with the idea of captivity and control. This is at the beginning of the story of Scaled and Icy, how he is under control. He's a prisoner. He's a captive of the bishops in the DEMA city. Then they talk about how they forced him to use his creativity to get out of his prison cell and to do a live show for the citizens of DEMA as kind of like a morale booster, essentially. And then they came out with the live show, and we all watched that together, which is awesome. And then you have, after that show, Clancy is thinking to himself, he's not sure about what they think of him, the bishops, but it must have gone well because they asked him to do another performance on the ship or the submarine that we saw in the music video from Saturday. And then the thing that kind of revealed a moment, if you look down at the bottom side of the letter, there is an area that is scratched. That actually reads, "I knew the bishops that were with me were not the true bishops," essentially. And so we got confirmation that the bishops that died in the crash, the bishops that we saw in the music video, wasn't actually the bishops of DEMA. They were impersonators. And there's a reason for that, is because this was a planned attack by the trash dragon, the big creature. And then they get attacked. So that's a summary of what this letter is saying. And the message for this was isolated. Now we know this is a common thread, Scaled and Icy was the term that Tyler Joseph thought of, referring to the pandemic, referring to where he is in life, and referring to the story of DEMA and the messaging for the music that they were creating. His idea for the title Scaled and Icy came from scaled back and isolated. And so isolated is the theme of this specific letter from Clancy. The next thing we got was instructions. And if you look at the top left-hand side, if you read it vertically and backwards, so from right to left and you go down, it says seize Keons. And then there's a constant narrative below that's saying seize available vessels. That is a term, vessels. They made an album called Vessel, but we're kind of seeing that the vessel is a term for a body that is available for control. Seize available vessels at Voldsoy Eastern Cave. And so we actually see the island, Voldsoy. We actually see the cave in the music video. And it just kind of is repeating. One thing that it's giving us a narrative for is glorious gone equals available vessels. And the glorious gone is actually referencing in the religion of vialism. So the point of vialism is to work citizens towards kind of like a ritual, and they refer to you as the glorious gone once the ritual is complete. And that ritual is pretty much death. And so it gets kind of weird, kind of like witchcrafty a little bit. And it's just a cult. And so the glorious gone is actually something that we heard in the end of Trench that wasn't fully explained. But now they're explaining it to us. Glorious gone equals available vessels. Vessels means people who are available to be controlled by the bishops through this new tactic that we will look at here. It gets a little confusing, but if you're keeping up with the story, this is actually exciting. They're revealing a lot. And this was called Weapon. And the theme of this is actually showing how if you have this specific weapon, it's little antlers, and you do a specific ritual movement, that it allows you to seize a vessel, essentially. And the name of this specific message was Weapon in the URL code. And then the last thing we got was another letter, and this, to summarize this one as well, it was basically towards the end of the music video is when Clancy's writing this. So this is after everything we see in the music video. So the letter summarized is Clancy is the only one who can wield this weapon. it's him and the torchbearer or Josh watching for Bandito's torches. So they're at night and they're trying to signal people on the continent of Trench because they are on a distant island and they're using fire and torches to, get the attention of the Banditos, to signal to them. This weapon feels familiar to Clancy. The way after he wields it, he feels the power now that he's the wielder, kind of like Frodo, and it feels familiar to him. It's not something that is a new experience exactly, and he doesn't know why. And then he starts contemplating a little bit to himself and thinks, maybe this is the weapon that the bishops use on the glorious gone to seize the vessel. Okay, so once someone has taken their life, once someone's vessel is available, then the bishops use this weapon the same way that we saw at the front of the video, that they use this weapon to control Trash, to plan the attack, to try to kill all of the glorious gone people that were on the ship and Clancy. Is a repetitious practice that the bishops put into place constantly. And then Clancy says, this is possibly a weapon that was used on me. And maybe that's why it's familiar to him. Maybe he wasn't completely dead. Maybe he wasn't a completely ready vessel, yet in some way they might have used this same tactic, this same weapon to control him when they had him in captivity. And then the last thing is that we got a URL code that was a little different. It was a string of numbers, and if you convert these numbers to letters according to the alphabet location, it reveals the word psychos. Why? Can you help me out with this one? Psychokinesis. That's a hard word. So the ability to control with your mind, essentially, and that's the common theme throughout this whole music video. So now that we kind of got through that, I want to point out once again, before I want to walk through a few slides and try to explain how the story plays out, and I want to real quickly just point out once again that they are on a distant island, and that the story of Saturday to the outside is there is a crash out in the ocean. All right, so they were going from Port Vile, somewhere in between, there was a crash, and then Clancy, or Tyler, was able to make it and survive to the island of violence, apparently. And that's just a quick tease. I'm going to explain more of that at the end. So, as we saw in the music video, Clancy washes up on shore. He doesn't know why he survived according to his letters, which actually I wanted to point out. The letters is interesting because in the messaging of the music, in the messaging of all the DEMA coding, we don't really get direct messaging. You have to kind of figure out what's being communicated, even in the lyrics of the songs. So when we see a direct, very clear to understand message from a letter like Clancy's letters, it's unique to what 21 Pilots does on a regular basis. So I don't think we've had this much of a lore dump information for the Trench universe, the DEMA universe, this entire era. And maybe this might be even a little bit more than the Trench era. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe not. Either way. And then Josh finds them. So this is just establishing where they are. They're on the island. They're on the island of violence. Volsoy, I think, is how it's pronounced. And then they're making their way through the caves. Clancy's kind of following Josh. He's not really sure where they're going. And then they get to a cave, and the cave is actually a really interesting point in the story because this is where it turns. This is where answers are starting to be solidified in Clancy's mind. And I want to flip over really quick to a sound bite that the sound that we hear, the music we hear, because it takes a break from the music and it plays a different song. So I want to switch over really quick and play this little section of songs, this little section of music, and I'll tell you what other 21 Pilots song this is, and I actually got help with this online, so I will shout them out in just a moment. Let's listen. So this is when they come up on the cave. There's a Ned creature with the antlers. I'm just listening. So a big thanks to, I believe it's pronounced Holiday Wolfie, who was in our comment section on my reaction to the music video itself. They actually helped me figure out that this was from the song Migraine. About a minute and 5 seconds into the song Migraine, if you listen to the instrumental version, it's a little easier to hear. You can hear that that is a little riff from the song. And there's actually a huge connection between what they're communicating in Migraine and what they are communicating in this music video for the outside. They go hand in hand, and I'll explain it at the end. But thank you, Holiday. Holiday Wall. I'm sorry, I messed up your name. Either way, I appreciate it. So let me switch back, and I'm gonna keep rolling on through this information. And so they go into the cave. And once they're in the cave, he starts to get answers from these Ned creatures. Now, I'm going to be honest, I tried to look for communication about the symbology of the Ned characters. I don't think we quite have enough. We know from Chlorine that there is an aspect of the Ned character inside that's like a character for. Some people think it is the fans, but I think that's kind of a lazy idea for the storytelling here because we already had the skeleton click. Now you think that the Ned character is also like the fans as well, not just the skeleton click. Or that I just have a feeling like a lot of 21 Pilots fans, if you're casually just not trying to think too deep on it, you just tend to interpret everything as like putting yourself in the situation. I don't think that's necessarily what's happening here. I'm not trying to offend anybody. All I'm saying is I think Ned symbolizes something very specific. It's a aspect of Clancy or Tyler's personality in his mind because this whole story is built around a battle that's happening inside the mind. So Ned is playing a specific concept, and now that we have multiple Neds, I'm not exactly sure. And I'm not exactly sure if this is the true Ned or not. If this is actually the Ned we know and love, because they all look the same, obviously. But he has grown out the horns, and we saw the horns grow in the music video for Chlorine. However, that was not taking place inside of the DEMA universe. It was just DEMA characters inside the music video for Chlorine. So he takes his antlers off and he gives them to Clancy, and this is the symbol for saying, here's a weapon, you can wield this. And this is what we heard the mental processing in the Clancy letters. And then he starts wielding it. And as you know, he gets control of Keon's, who was already a vessel, because what they did was, for some reason, and I've thought about it a little bit, so if Keon's was controlling Trash Dragon for the attack, and then they slaughter Keon's, well, now they can destroy Trash at the same time, create Keon's as a vessel, and maybe their plan was to be like, okay, we're just going to bring him back or something like that. Either way, Tyler gets a hold of the Keon's vessel, and he takes it down and ultimately destroys that specific bishop. And it's really symbolic. This is the first time we see not just talk of victory, not just talk of being like actually combative and being able to fight logically with the bishops in the city of DEMA, but this is actual representation where he literally destroys one of the 9 bishops, and we see that visually when he breaks the beams of light that have always represented the 9 bishops and the towers in DEMA and vialism. So then at the end of the letter, this is actually the location where the second letter from Clancy was being written. They are standing on the edge of the water. They're holding their torches, looking for the banditos good ways off to see their light and respond and send a message. So, and then it ends with 2 other characters. So the reason I wanted to finish this video off, the reason I wanted to bring migraine up is because this is significant. This is a line, this is a few, it's like a verse from the song Migraine. And let me just read it to you. Please let me paint a mental picture portrait, okay? And this was made years ago. This wasn't like this isn't from the new album, all right? Something you won't forget, it's all about my forehead. Deny what is important holds back contents. What makes Pandora's box contents look non-violent. Behind my eyelids are islands of violence. Okay, so there we go. We have the island of violence in the trench world and the DEMA universe. My mind is shipwrecked. We had a shipwreck from Saturday, and he washed up on the island of violence. This is the only land my mind could find. I did not know it was such a violent island. Bullet, tidal waves, suicidal, crazed lions. And then this is getting a little bit more abstract, and this was earlier on, so maybe he was still crafting the idea of bishops, but this is representation of who the bishops have become in the story. They're trying to eat me, blood running down their chin, and they know that I can fight or I can let the lion win. I begin to assemble what weapons I can find. Again, now he has a weapon, because sometimes to stay alive, you got to kill your mind. Okay, so we are literally seeing this whole music video is literally telling the visual story of this verse from the song. It's talking now from the perspective of this. It's migraine. It's a battle inside of his mind, and he paints a mental picture portrait. And something that we won't forget, now we actually can see it. He's not having to communicate it to us. We actually have a music video for it, and that's why they've done so many. Is eludations a word? Eludications? It sounds like a word. I'm going to use it. That's why they've done so many eludications to this song, both in the little riff when they enter the cave, why they have terminology like weapons, island of violence, constantly, that we don't see anywhere else except now in this part of the lore for DEMA and this song from Migraine from years ago. So there's obviously a connection. I don't know if there's a connection past this other than just saying, hey, I told what you're seeing in this music video, I told this story in a song, and I'm trying to help you see the connections there. So, and that also reinforces the idea that Trench, the world, literally looks like a brain now that we see the map, and at the same time, we know this is a visual narrative. This is an actual narrative with characters of the ultimate message of something that's going on inside of a person who is mentally ill's mind, which has been the constant thread for 21 Pilots across all of their years of making music, doing concerts, making music videos, messages. Thank you so much for watching. That's roughly all my thoughts. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 thoughts I forgot to get out. Either way, I want to hear yours, because right now that's very important. Last time I did a big breakdown for Saturday, a lot of people gave me great insights, and I would love to hear yours. I know this is a little bit of a longer video. Thank you for sticking with me. Like the video. I really appreciate it. And please leave a comment with all of your thoughts and interests in the Outside music video. Thanks so much.